This is Out of Office Era, a podcast where we're unpacking real conversations about the things we love, the places that we go, and the people that we're becoming. I'm your host, Janelle Rupp-Calvis, a travel and lifestyle content creator that shares both the beautiful moments and the behind the scenes on the internet. But this is the space where we're going to dive deeper. Hey friends, before we get into today's episode, I want to give a quick heads up. We are talking about grief today, and specifically the loss of a parent. My friend Charlotte is here, and she's going to share her experience of losing her mom when she was 10 years old and how that loss still shows up in her life nearly 20 years later. We're going to talk about what grief really looks like over time and how we can show up for the people that we love when they're carrying something heavy, and what it means to grow into adulthood without one of the people who was supposed to be there. This conversation is layered, reflective, and full of love. But if grief feels tender for you right now, take care of yourself however you need to. And if you're in it or love someone who is, I hope this makes you feel a little bit more seen. Hi, Charlotte. Welcome to the podcast today.
Hello. It's so great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. Charlotte is a dear friend of mine. We met through the internet, of course, through the travel space, and just immediately connected. She is so warm and so just energetic, charming, and just like she's the type of person when you're in a room, she's like the connector, like wants to introduce you to everyone, all of her friends, and I just love her so much. We've been to a couple different conferences together, and she's just another great follow if you guys are in the travel space.
Well, thank you. And I laugh about the connection on account of I got a text today that said, "Hey, do you have any friends at the White House that give tours?" And I said, "Oh, I don't." They said, "Of all people, I expected you to." I was like, "Well, okay."
Yes. She also has some crazy connections in DC. She's like going, aren't you celebrating Bastille Day today
Yep,
with
headed
the
over to
French
the French
embassy?
embassy right after this.
Yeah, which is so fun and so cool. So yeah, Charlotte has been to so many places. Tell me about your love for travel and kind of how you got into it. I know your mom kind of weaves into some of that story too, so I think it's a really good starting point for us to talk about.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, both of my parents were travelers, but my mom a little bit more so than my dad.
Yeah.
I definitely get some of the crazy travel from my mom because she actually went to 4 different colleges in 4 different years. She started her freshman year at the Monterey Institute of Foreign Studies in California, then transferred to Hong Kong for a year, and then Italy for a year, and then graduated at Lake Forest in Chicago. And
Wow.
she was studying Mandarin and Italian, and so she then did a year in both places.
Yeah.
And she studying abroad in Hong Kong in 1978 is crazy.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, you don't even have like cell phones to contact your family. Like
No.
our current way of connecting with people it doesn't exist. So like you think about being all over that far away from home, it's a way different experience than it is today.
And to fly over there and to be
Yeah.
just so disconnected from everything for however long you're there was absolutely crazy. And picturing navigating the public transit without any sort of
Like your
extra
Google
help.
map on your phone, yeah, like where it's like, "Oh, take this train to this stop, transfer here." Like even in Japan, it'll tell me like, "Oh, get on the second car in because then when you transfer, you're going to get into this car on the next train." Like none of that.
Yeah, exactly. And so, with my mom's background in travel, she got me exposed to travel early on. And I took a few trips with her and my dad. We did a cruise when I was 7 years old. And that was my first, like, really leaving the country and exploring. And
Yeah.
then ultimately, once my mom passed, my dad ended up buying an RV. And we traveled
Mm,
cross country for 3 summers in the RV. So I was able to hit 44 states by the time I was 16.
that's
And
really cool.
that really sparked my domestic travel interest and being able to be really on the go and flexible and figure things out. Because here I am at 12 years old trying to direct my dad how to drive an RV
Yeah.
up onto the levelers. And it's like, well, you just got to learn how to make it happen. And that's what travel is.
And you're probably like using like MapQuest directions at the time again too, like just
The
crazy.
fact that I remember the Garmin coming out was
Oh yeah.
life-changing. I
Yeah.
said to my dad, "I don't need to use our mass." We had a map that was bigger than half of my torso of all
Yeah.
50 states because it was
Wow.
just my dad and I. I was in charge of giving directions, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I'm 12 years old. Like, how do I do
Yeah.
this? Sitting there with the maps being like, "Okay, 95 goes here and this turns," crazy. And so it really taught me to be a resourceful traveler because there was no other option.
Right, right. Like you were your dad's right-hand woman in the seat right there, helping him navigate and get across the US and travel. Do you think that that
Exactly.
trip was like related to some of the grief processing? How about like maybe we back up. Let's talk about your mom first and like kind of that process. What do you remember about your mom passing and like what are some of those words or moments that stick with you because you were 10 years old, right?
Yeah, and this has actually been coming up a lot recently. I think one question that a lot of people, because I'm so open with my grief
Yeah.
and I'm not afraid to talk about it, but then sometimes people they want to ask those really tough questions, but they're also kind of scared. So I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of people ultimately ask, and I will say this is something that I feel like you need to build rapport with someone to be able to ask. But I've had some people straight out of the gate, some people that know me better say, "So were you there when your mom died?"
Oh.
And that's one of those questions.
Whoa.
Yeah, and
Whoa.
because of being at the place where I am, I'm now okay talking about that, but
Yeah.
very early out the gate, I feel like, "Oh, that's a little bit more intimate."
Personal.
Whereas
Yeah,
if
personal.
you are supporting someone that you know, that's a story that they're more likely to share once they've built some relationship to you.
Totally. I know it's interesting you say that. I've always been in the shoes of like when I've had friends who I've met later on in life, and you kind of piece together that maybe their family structure is a little different. They might not either whether or not they had passed or whatnot. Like you kind of start piecing some of that together. And I've always been in the state of mind of like when they're ready to tell me, they'll tell me. I don't want to feel like I'm prying too much into their life. But there is a fine line too of like you also want to ask questions to show that you're interested in their life and like that you want to hear more about it. So yeah, what do you remember about, like, your time when you were, 10 years old, your mom's passing? And this wasn't, like share her story just because I know a little bit of the backstory of how she passed, but
Mhm.
just for people who are tuning in who don't know her backstory, so then we can get into some of those kind of questions, surrounding your experience.
Yes. So my mom was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. The technical
Mhm.
name was leiomyosarcoma.
Okay.
And it I always talk about too that cancer research has been so different from when my mom got sick in 2005 to now
Yeah.
that even if it wasn't a rare form, like you never would know like with how technology has advanced. So I try to never play a what if game and just
Mhm.
acknowledge
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is what it was. And so she went through 55 rounds of chemo over
Ooh.
18 months and it was a very intensive experience and I my parents were divorced at the time when my mom got
Okay.
sick and as she was going through everything, so it was very much just her and I. So I
Yeah.
remember being in the hospital with her as she was getting CAT scans, as she was getting chemo done, and that
Yeah.
eventually gave me some PTSD around doctors because growing
Yeah.
up, this was pretty much my only experience outside of just normal checkups that I needed for
Checkups.
public school. So, backing up there, she had been sick for 18 months. What I
Yeah.
didn't know until later was that originally they had only projected about 6 months.
Wow.
So, especially being so young, there were things that people told me, there were also things that people didn't tell me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I didn't know that she was going to pass. Like, I had my assumptions, but I didn't have any confirmation until 15 minutes before.
Okay. Okay.
And
Wow. So
yeah,
it was you still like knew that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, and I wanted you to be able to tell like the story of your mom and just like her getting sick and all of that because it wasn't like this was an accident, so you had no idea that this was coming, where some people have freak accidents and they're just completely shocked, but it still is shocking because you just don't picture this happening. And it had been 18 months of this, she's doing the things, going to the treatments, and you're 10 years old. Like conceptually, what can you even like understand, and what sort of language did you even have about understanding the medical world, let alone death and grief?
exactly. And part of it was the last 48 hours, she had been in and out of comas and she was
Mm.
still at home. And I went in, I remember
Oh.
distinctly going in to say goodbye to her to school. And she was sitting there, sitting up with her eyes wide open, unresponsive. And everyone just said, "Oh, it's just the chemo. It's just what the chemo does," not explaining what was happening. But
Was
I knew
happening.
that something was different. And the last 6 months, she had been on a breathing tube. So that sound
Mhm.
was constant in the house, and that was one of the biggest shocks when I came
Mm.
home, was to a silent house.
Mm.
That was
That's
the biggest thing
interesting.
of like,
Yeah.
I don't hear this machine running." And that was
Yeah.
one of the biggest changes that I had to get used to, was the silence.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even thought about that, but you're right, like, you just get so used to something kind of happening in the background and, as a kid, you can notice that the second you come in, you're like, "Something's different here," and even though people aren't communicating it to me directly, there are other cues of communication that I'm picking up on as a kid, that I'm able to understand.
Absolutely. And my mom's journey, we had an in-house hospice nurse for a good chunk of
Mhm.
time, because we got to a point where I couldn't do more and she
Yeah,
couldn't do
yeah.
enough. And so again, I would do as much as I could at 9 years old, but it's not like I can
Right.
be cooking meals for us. And that is where, and I
Mm.
know we'll dive into this more, but the community outpouring of support
Mm.
that we had was beyond our wildest dreams. And there's
Wow.
so many things in that time that my brain kind of blocked out or grayed out a
Yeah.
little bit because of trauma. But I
Yeah.
remember that we had a cooler out front of our house, and every day someone of my classmates
Oh,
and their
yeah.
family was bringing dinner. And I remember thinking
Mm.
this was so funny because there was a guy that truthfully had a big crush on. So I think this is why I remember it.
Yeah.
But his family got signed up for a day, not realizing that it was, I want to say it was Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, whatever the Jewish holiday is where they fast.
Oh,
And
okay.
they were Jewish, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, we don't eat today," and they just sent us a pizza, which was
Yeah.
so precious and so funny
Yeah.
that I would just remember them going so far out of their way that they're like, "Ooh, we're fasting, we're not a part of this, but we're still showing up for you."
Yeah.
And it was just amazing how everyone was coming together, bringing food so that we were supported, because that was one of the biggest obstacles, was that my mom wasn't feeling good and I was too young to be able to make
Cook in the
nutritious
kitchen.
meals. Yeah,
Right.
and so a meal train was
Wow.
one of the most kind things, and it's something that even through all of that, I remember so vividly.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking right now about like this huge transformational portion of your life that has a lot of negative trauma and grief and things associated with it. But it's powerful to me that one of the biggest topics we've talked about since we started the podcast here, this episode, was the positive outpouring of love and community that you felt in the one of the toughest moments of your life. And that's like sticks to you 20 years later that you remember these instances. And that's so powerful, especially
Mhm.
even as a 10-year-old, to like be able to feel and recognize that. I mean, even just like picturing the imagery, like the cooler on the front porch.
Yeah, and I just love how seeds are planted in each of those seasons, and you never know where it's going to grow and when the harvest will come. And that's not our
Mhm.
job. Like, again, faith is very important to me. And
Yeah.
as something that is one of the biggest things that has helped, the biggest thing that has helped me through my grief journey. But our job is to plant seeds. God's job is the harvest. And it's so interesting because I remember that first anniversary of my mom's passing.
Mhm.
And there had been a guy that had a locker near me, and he was very, very kind to me around my mom's anniversary because I was very vocal about, like, I don't know how the emotions are going to hit on this day. And
Yeah.
that was in 6th grade, but flash forward to my senior year of high school. Now a lot of time has passed since my mom's passing when I was in 5th grade, and me being the person that I am, enjoying thank you cards. This is something I don't talk about that often, but I wrote a thank you card to everyone in my high school graduating class, and it was
Wow. What? How many
431
people did you?
people.
Oh my god. I was like,
Yeah.
did you go to school with 50 kids? What?
No,
400?
unfortunately 431, and I knew
Oh
all
my
but
god.
probably 10, and
Yeah.
some I had more history with than others. But what was interesting, and I was not a great writer, they were very simple, but so much of my motivation behind it was that at least one-fourth of these people were so kind to me when I went through this. This is a little
Mm.
thing I can do to just be like, "Hey, your kindness was not forgotten, and I wish you all the
Yeah.
best, even if I never see you again. And what's so crazy is that that guy who I remember being so kind to me in 6th grade, I saw him at my 10-year high school reunion this past November. He V-lined over to me with his fiance and just came right out the gate and said, "You would have never known this, but my dad died freshman year of college." And I was like,
Oh my.
"Oh." I was so caught off guard, and he goes, "The letter that you wrote me meant so much to me, and I have kept, like, very few letters in my life, and I still have that." And so I don't
Wow.
remember what I wrote to him, but I think I
Yeah.
remember writing that he had been so kind to me around my mom's first anniversary. And to know then that would help and encourage him as he navigated his own father's death the next year, and then to
Yeah.
not hear about that for another decade was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, it's not
That's
my job to
powerful. Like,
see the reaction. My job is just to act on whatever promptings are put on my heart, and it's up to
mhm.
God for the rest."
Do you feel like your experiences of like receiving so much of that like outpouring of community and love through your mom's illness has like impacted you, and because I've known you as this just gracious person who is always there to help a hand with someone, and I'm sure part of that is just innate in the family that you grow up in, but I part of me wonders too, is it just like ingrained in you from your experiences so young and it was so powerful? Like, what do you think about how that has transformed your experiences kind of growing up into who you are today?
I definitely think it has transformed me because, one, from a very early age, I got to see how precious life is and
Mm,
that
yeah.
tomorrow's not promised any of us. And it really changed my trajectory of, well, I'm not going to let this pass me by. I'm always going to be the most affectionate, the most loving. If I have a compliment, I'm going to tell someone. If I care for
Mhm.
someone,
Yeah.
I'm going to show up because we don't know that tomorrow's coming for any of us. And I got to witness my mom live like that, and it was for the people that you
Mhm.
wouldn't expect. My mom had such a I joke around because I am such this extroverted, bubbly
Yeah.
personality. My dad is more of the extroverted. He has a lot of friendships, and my mom had less, but they were deeper. And I feel like I'm
Okay.
a mix of both. And my mom had a
Yeah.
special heart for animals and the elderly. And I
Mhm.
remember at the dog park, my mom met this man named Ted who had been living in a trailer park, and his kids had stopped visiting him, stopped really like taking care of him. And next thing you know, my mom and I are regularly visiting him at his trailer park, like checking in on him,
Mhm.
on his dog. Ultimately, his kids put him in a nursing home, and the nursing home was treating him poorly, was giving him the wrong
Mm.
medication, and I watched my mom break him out of the nursing home. And
Oh
I
my
was like,
god, how old were you at this time? Like, what would you say?
7.
Wow. Yeah.
And I just remember this so clearly of her being like, "No, what's happening to him is not right. Like we are standing up, we are showing up." And just the outpour that she had for other people that could never pay her back, that never she
Yeah.
could get something out of. And then what was really crazy and goes back to my school support system was that, you know how in a lot of memorials they say, "In lieu of flowers, please make a donation
Mhm.
to XYZ."
Yeah.
My mom, in lieu of flowers, wanted donations to go to our local animal shelter. And
Mm.
what was so interesting was that when I turned 18, I got into the possession of a lot of my mom's stuff. Some of it was old
Yeah.
tax files, some of it was old photos, and I found all the receipts from the animal shelter of who had donated in lieu of flowers for
Whoa.
my mom. And it was
Yeah.
classmate after classmate after classmate
Mm.
of that their families. And it wasn't anything
Ugh.
crazy, but it was like we are showing up, we are doing something
Yeah.
here. And to
Yeah.
know that
We're
even
showing
in that
support of you and your family.
exactly. And so many we had an open funeral, like an open memorial service, and I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
probably 75% of my 5th grade class came.
Wow. That's so powerful to just know that these people are standing behind you and supporting you, especially at such a young age when I'm sure a lot of it was confusing. Or do you feel like it was confusing for you to understand this? Or like, what do you remember about those conversations kind of surrounding death and what life looks like kind of after your mom passes? Because you probably don't have also a lot of friends who've gone through this at that point, like, like you don't have
Correct.
a blueprint.
Correct. It was a lot of differences, and also what I would say is that my school handled it pretty well, especially because this is something that rocked the community. Not a whole lot of people had
Yeah.
experienced things like this, not just me, but as the school. My mom was part of the PTO. She was an active stay-at-home
Mm,
mom that did all these things. And so what I really respected about my elementary school, we had 4 classes, 4 elementary school like per grade. And the
okay.
principal, along with the social worker, went after the news that my mom had passed, because she passed in the middle of the day, and I had been in school
Hmm.
that morning. They pulled me out. By the time I got there, she passed by about 12:15 in the afternoon, and before everyone went home at 3 o'clock, the school went and notified everyone and said, "We wanted to let you know that Charlotte's mom died today." And they offered support for the kids if they needed anything. Because again,
Hmm.
even if it wasn't happening to them, it was confusing, it was sad, and people
Yeah.
didn't know how to
They don't
process
understand
that.
what this means necessarily. Yeah, as a
Exactly.
kid. Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
And they
especially with
sent
her being
home
involved in the school too.
for sure. And they sent home a letter for the kids to give to their parents to be like, this is what's
Mhm,
going on in our community. And whether I agree with it or not, my dad had me in school the next day. And that was a
mhm,
very interesting choice. He picked me up halfway through the day to see how I was feeling. And
mhm.
I would say that my classmates didn't really know how to handle. They're like, "You're
Yeah,
here, you're back." But I think one of the best things that can happen in grief and from getting back into the swing of things is developing a new normal. And
yeah,
that is one thing that we can do to support our friends that are going through grief is
mhm.
helping them establish their new normal and just meeting them where they are.
Yeah,
I
I think that that's I mean,
Mhm.
you bring up such a good point with your classmates, like, not knowing what to do necessarily and, like, "Oh, you're back," and I feel like as an adult, I don't know how to handle this very well. I'm not someone who's had to, luckily and thus far in my life had to go through a massive grief experience where I'm grieving, the loss of someone close to me. So for me, I even as a 31-year-old, it's complicated. Like I don't know how to show up for people. So what would you say is the most powerful thing that someone can do for you kind of in those first few days or weeks or months to even now 20 plus years later? What does that grief journey look like for you personally and how can people in your life support you through that?
I will scream it from the rooftops that I love the topic of love languages, because people talk
Mhm.
about the 5 love languages typically in the capacity of romantic. But
Yeah.
I love understanding my friends' love languages, because if I can understand my
Mhm.
friends' love languages, I can show up better as a friend outside of a romantic relationship. But for the
Right.
people you care about, understanding their love languages means that you can meet them better where they are. And for me, my number one love language, without a question, is physical touch. So for me, when
Yeah.
life is really hard, a large, safe hug goes
Mm.
so much farther than arguably anything else. Sometimes I have just needed to
Yeah.
cry in someone's arms or hold a hand and just feel someone's presence to know that I am not alone in this, because I recognize that nothing that they say can change my situation, but the physical touch of
Mhm.
someone there shows that I am not alone. Some people
Yeah,
I
it's
know
a physical reminder.
Mhm. Some people I know hate physical touch, and that will make them feel
Yeah.
smothered. So understanding the
Yeah.
people that you are loving on shows that, well, is this person going to feel more loved with a gift or act of service? If I come and mow
Mhm.
their lawn for them, what about coming and making dinner so that they don't have to think about it? Because
Yeah.
when you're experiencing grief and trauma and that initial shock, you don't really have much of an appetite, but your body is like, hey, I need something. So to be able to show up for
Yeah.
someone in that capacity may be much more beneficial than a hug or a nice letter. But that's why
Yeah.
understanding people's love languages can help you to better show up for the people that you care about, even if it's in such uncharted territory, because you know what makes them feel loved.
I think that's such a powerful statement and kind of frame of reference for us as people to understand the people in our lives and our friendships and relationships is love languages aren't just for romantic relationships. Like this is how we can show up for your best friend or your sibling or whoever and meet them where they're at in ways that will impact them the most because you're right, like some people don't love physical touch. So for them it'd be like, this is too much. You're in my bubble. I feel smothered, maybe, or whatever it is. But maybe sending them a coffee in the morning just to let them know that you're thinking of them, or whatever it is, could be that form of showing up for them that impacts them the most. And I think that's a really, really good reminder for all of us, kind of as we're looking at how to help people in our lives, because sometimes you just don't know how to best show up, and it feels like not like if you almost feel paralyzed in a sense of like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And like what you said, some people can just ask some very invasive questions, which
Mhm.
let's not go there. Let's not do that as people. Actually, I want to know, like, what are some like no question, like people questions that people have asked you that no one should ever be asking like right away. What are some of those like crazy things that you would think that people should just know that they don't seem to?
Well, it's not as much a question, it was just a statement, but the amount of adults
Mm.
that came up to me within 2 weeks after my mom died and was like, "Well, at least she's not suffering anymore." I was like, "None of
Yeah.
that made me feel any better." Like, that's just not and it was
That's such a
not
good
a
point.
one-time thing. This was, like, consistently adults
Yeah.
coming and, like, getting down on eye level with the 10-year-old and being like, "Well, at least she's not suffering." And I finally had to say to my father, I was
Yeah.
like, "The word suffering is not allowed in the house for a while. I can't deal with it."
Interesting, yeah. Well,
And
right,
so
'cause it's like, well, yeah, she's not suffering, but I still grieve her. Like, I still miss her. Like,
but it's
I
not
still wish she
even
was
that,
here.
it's the reminder of the suffering at the end. Because it's like
Oh, yeah.
it's the trigger. It's one thing to be like, "Okay, well, yeah, like, she's still not here, that's painful," but it's the
Yeah.
reminder of, like, how bad it was at the end, and
Mm,
that I had a front row seat to that, and you're
yeah.
like, "Well, at least she's not suffering." I'm like, "Well, I still see that in my brain, and you're bringing this up, and that's not supportive for anyone."
Yeah. You're reminding me of all the struggles that we just went through. Like, this just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, and because you would like, I can see where it's like maybe well intentioned, but someone sitting in your position is like, this isn't helping me right now. Like, what would you feel would be what was helpful in those moments in terms of what people could say to you right after? What are like helpful statements that people can say?
I would say that instead of saying things of that nature, it's reaffirming the relationship and who that person
Mm,
was that would be so much more beneficial. Because again, we know that nothing
yeah,
you can say is going to change anything, but saying confidently, like, your mother loved you so much, and speaking
yeah,
affirmation of who she was as a person and saying, like, she was so kind to me, all these things that just affirm the good things when everything
yeah,
feels
like,
like they are flooded with pain and hurt. That is what's more
yeah.
helpful than being like, "Well, at least they're not," and you're like, "No."
Yeah. Well, it's almost like, the suffering brings back those negative emotions and negative reminders and negative memories versus if they're coming at you with the positive things and positive memories and the things like that. It's like at least you're being showered then with more love and positivity versus the reminders of the negativity that you just experienced. You're still in the depths of processing. You probably will be processing for the next months, days, years, whatever it is to come. And like talking about it with, strangers or parents of people's friends or like friends' parents or whatever probably isn't the most helpful thing in that moment. Like you just want to be told that, we're here for you, you're loved, your mother loved you, like she was an amazing woman and we will miss her. Such a
Exactly.
good point.
Like,
Like
that may
I
still
think it's
cause
hard.
some tears, which is okay.
Yeah.
It's always better to err on the side of positivity, and it's not this fake false positivity that, "Oh, things are sunshine and rainbows," but it's just
Yeah.
gravitating towards the better when it feels like everything is walking on shaky ground.
Yeah. Well, it's like adding some lightness to a really just like heavy moment in your life and period of your life where it's like, oh, we can smile and laugh about the good times and the good memories that we had and talk about it.
Yeah, and I think
How
that
have
leads into well, yes, your question.
I was gonna say, how does that like affect you today? So this is like right after, how to support someone that you love. But now as someone who's, 20 years almost past the anniversary of your mom's death, how does that look? What does it look like as a friend who's trying to support someone who's going through this? 20 years later, because grief is a journey. It's not like you're over it. You will never be over the passing of your mom. Like
Mhm.
that's something that just doesn't go away. So how do we as friends, when it's not maybe immediately after, what does support look like today for you or for other people who go through this?
There are two very specific times that I would say that you can be supporting someone. It's the fact that there's that initial part after those first 2 to 4 weeks, everyone's really showing up, and then everyone just
Yeah.
says, "Okay, go back to your normal life." And then there's so much room for support because you're like, "Well, I'm not back to a normal life." And you're
Yeah.
rebuilding, and especially that first 6 to 12 months, the first everything is often challenging. The first
Mm,
Christmas, the first birthday. So being able
yeah.
to be extra present on those anniversaries is very helpful. But what I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize, as you talked about, that grief continues on because you keep experiencing more life. I think about this a lot,
Mhm.
especially I've been loving getting to watch your engagement and as you've been
Mm,
planning your wedding. For
yeah.
so long, I have thought about the fact that my mom is not gonna be there at my wedding, and she's never gonna
Yeah.
get to meet the man that I get to marry one day, and I know
Mhm.
that will be a very emotional thing. I watched my high
Mhm.
school graduation, my college graduation, and these such exciting moments had a layer of grief and pain to them. So,
Yeah.
it's talking through that with the loved one that's experiencing it and saying, "How can I support you?" One thing that I did was I left an open chair for my mom at my high school graduation. I taped a ticket to it and
Mhm.
said, "This is an empty seat for her." And
Yeah.
with college graduation, figuring out how I could honor and bring my mom into it. But there's all those big life moments that can be so exciting and then have a layer of grief and pain to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially
That's such a good point.
for me, I am a very date oriented person. So, those anniversaries for me, I would say this is a safe rule
Mhm.
of thumb to check in on people is on if it's someone's parent, check in on Mother's Day or Father's Day, check in
Mhm.
on their birthday, and on the anniversary of their passing. Because if this is someone
Okay.
that you really love, learning those 3 dates is not asking too much to say, "My
Yeah.
closest friends know my mom's birthday and the anniversary of her passing because they know
Yeah.
that is a day that I need more support."
Yeah, and it's a tough day because I feel like do you feel like you can't talk about it as much later? Like, now, years past, like, let's say it's her birthday, this isn't just, like, a year ago that she passed, it's now almost 20 years. Do you find that I mean, I'm sure not you're very open and about talking about this, so maybe not for you specifically, but, do you find that other people who go through this, feel grief or weird talking about it, like maybe I shouldn't bring it up, or is that a common thing that people feel? Because I think sitting from the friend side is like, oh, I don't want to bring it up and make them feel worse about it, like, how do we
Mhm.
handle this, like what does that look like?
It that's a great question, and it's so great that you're thinking about those kind of things. I think that just more so goes back to, do people feel like they can ask for help when needed?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are those times where, yeah, maybe it is okay. Maybe the anniversaries don't strike as much of a nerve to someone as much as they do with me. Maybe they aren't
Mhm.
someone that matters about dates as much, or Mother's Day is a day that they can just block out and say, oh, well, it's this. Or when you become a mother yourself, you're like, well, now I can reclaim this day as a fun,
Yeah.
special day. So
Right.
it's just, are you facilitating an area where your loved one knows that they can come to you if they need help without necessarily you having to pry it out of them, or
Mhm.
them not feeling like, well, I can't talk about it. It's been too long, because the right people know that the right people are there for them. And throughout this journey, I have learned lovingly there are some people that I can talk to about this and
Mhm.
people that I can't, because
Okay. Yeah.
there is nothing that will make a grieving person feel worse than them having to tiptoe around your feelings because
Uh,
you feel uncomfortable.
yeah, your feelings about their grief.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that is a lesson that I had to learn after having conversations with people, and so many well meaning people. Oh, I'm here for you. But I've had a couple gal pals
Mhm.
over the years that will be talking, and I'll be sharing some heavy grief things. And then they just don't know how to handle and sit in the awkwardness. And then they're like, well, what about like boys in your life?
And then just switch the subject. And it's like,
And
I'm
to
trying to
talk about something so like trivial as my dating life, I'm like, okay, so I'm never talking to you about this again.
yeah, yeah, because it's like you just changed the subject. I'm trying to open up to you and share, my thoughts or feelings or memories or emotions about it, and now I just feel dismissed in this.
Correct. And it's, again, the idea of sometimes people just don't know how to sit in that uncomfortableness, and it is
Mhm.
uncomfortable. Grief is
Yeah.
hard, and these painful feelings, and especially as I shared early on, of when I've had people ask me, were you there when she passed? That's not something I
Mhm.
usually lead with to people, but I was. And
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
friends that I have spoken to and shared vividly what that whole day was of me walking through, coming out of school, arriving at the
Mhm.
hospice center, being there holding her hand as she took her final breath. And those are
Mhm.
only things that I share with people that I know that can handle it and won't make me feel worse after.
Yeah, yeah, like, they know how to take care of you in those moments and just respond in a way that is helpful, not hurtful, or
Mhm,
even whether it's again, I don't think people have, like, or ill intentions around these things, but if they don't know how to handle some of this information, it can just feel dismissive if they're changing the subject and you're sharing the last moments you have with your mother, like, that is
mhm,
not a moment that you just brush away and go on to the next subject about. Like, that's
exactly.
wild to me. How have you handled with you now today meeting new people, like dating, for example, or new friendships that you make? How do you bring up the subject of having a deceased parent? Or,
Mhm,
this could be applied in other situations too, but I think it's a topic where I'm interested as, a friend of people. Like I've gone through these experiences with other friends, and it's something that, when I had mentioned where you start picking up that maybe their family units aren't the same. How should we address this as friends? How should we show up and be there when they start opening up and talking about it? How do you handle it right now?
yeah, I think it can really depend. Some people, again, are much more freely willing to talk about it. Some people aren't.
Mhm.
So, part for me is that I wear my mom's thumbprint every day on my necklace.
Mm.
And
Oh
that is
wow.
a big conversation starter. And so,
Yeah.
that is often a way that it comes up in conversation naturally. Or
Mhm.
I share stories about my mom all the time. And sometimes I'll almost give a little bit of a disclaimer if I then have to preface that, well, she's not here anymore. If I'm
Yeah.
about to tell a story that's gonna come up, even if it's to a new friend, I'll preface and say, "Hey, so this is gonna get really deep for a second, but I promise we're gonna pull back up." Kinda like a
Okay.
plane. Just go in and say,
Yeah.
It's going to get a little bumpy. We're gonna pull back up." And that takes away some of the shock factor, because
Yeah.
if it also shows that the person is more comfortable talking about it, of like, "Hey, Imma say this is gonna be a little bit heavy, and then we're gonna go right out of it, and it's gonna be fine," then they feel more at ease of like, okay, she's acknowledging that this was a hard thing that she just dropped on me, and
Yeah,
It opens up more conversations, but I think that someone's willingness to talk about it, and you can tell if someone is open and willing to talk about a
totally.
conversation, if they stray away from it or you ask one follow-up question and you can tell by body language or immediate, uh, then you just drop it and it's okay. And if someone
Mhm.
wants to talk about it later, they will. And if they
Yeah.
don't, you just trust that people who are grieving know what is best for them and
Mm.
how they want to be supported. So they will
Okay,
make it
yeah.
clear of I either would like to talk about this or I don't.
Yeah. And if someone, let's say you're getting the vibes that someone doesn't want to talk about this anymore, and you're kind of like, okay, what's a good thing that the other person can say to let them know that they're supported, that you're there for them, and kind of move that conversation along? Like, how would you say is like that good transition piece?
Yeah. A good transition piece. One, I really like the affirmation of, especially if someone's feeling uncomfortable with it, just say,
Mm,
I really appreciate your willingness to share that with me, especially you
yeah.
even acknowledge that it was a hard, vulnerable thing, but just say, I really appreciate your willingness to share that with me. And I hope that you know this, but I just want to make sure that you do that if you ever need to talk about it, if you ever need anything, I'm here for you however you need.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice for because that's sometimes the awkward part, or at least that I found is like, how do okay, I'm feeling the vibes. I don't know. I don't want to seem dismissive, so I don't want to come off that way. But how do I show up for them? But also by showing right now, showing up for them means moving the conversation along because I can tell that they don't want to talk about it. So
Yeah,
that's I think a really good piece of advice to help people in those situations because you have those, or maybe it's not the right time, or it's not the right crowd. Like there's too many people around, and they know it's going to get really emotional or really intense really quickly. So it's not always that it's you that they don't want to talk about it with, or that it's something that you said or whatever, but maybe they just aren't in the mood to bring that up.
correct. And I think making sure that you're not bringing attention to that is big
Yeah.
of not saying, "Well, I can tell you don't wanna talk about it." You're
Ooh,
like,
that's a good point. Yeah.
that feels so blaming on the person of saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, I can tell you don't wanna talk about it, so let's just," and you're like, "Mm-mm," again, dismissive and puts it on the person who's grieving. So,
Yeah.
affirming to them, "I really appreciate your willingness to share that," and then moving forward of saying, if you ever need anything, I'm here."
Yeah, that's a great point. Now with like celebrating your mom today and
Mhm.
sharing her memories, like how do you do that today, and how do people in your life show up for you celebrating your mom and keeping her memory alive?
Mhm. I am so thankful that I have a lot of people that typically reach out to me on Mother's Day just saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about you if you need anything." Because
Mhm.
it's interesting that this Mother's Day was the worst Mother's Day that I probably have
Yeah.
ever had, and it's just like, it's been 18 years, like, this why? And so the
Yeah,
fact
why
that
was this one the one out of all of them? You're like
yeah.
it yeah, you just don't know when it's going to hit you.
This Mother's Day, I had a flight in the evening, and I had 2 friends that came and sat in my apartment as I cried and packed and drove me to the airport blasting Hannah Montana, and I said, "You know, that's how
Mm,
I need someone to show up today." It's not in the elaborate gestures, it's the, "Hey, sit on my couch as
yeah.
I cry and pack, and then drive me to the airport." Sometimes the practical things are the best way that you can show up for those that are going through a hard time.
And just reminding you that you're not alone. So you're not sitting there crying, and like you have someone to talk to and process these emotions with. I think that's so powerful. And I mean, just that sense of community again, like going back to how you first felt so supported with the meal train that was showing up. And now maybe it's not a meal train today, but it's driving you to the airport and being there when you cry. It's like that same type of support and community in ways that you need it differently today. Like, you know?
Mhm, and I'm such a big birthday person, as you know,
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
account
you
of,
are.
sent
Yes.
you the party full and the save the dates that came out 10 months in advance. See, you're
Yes.
planning a wedding and I'm planning a birthday. It's clearly the same level of time to plan.
I think you spend the same amount of time planning your birthday as I am my wedding, so that's okay.
Exactly. So
Yes.
for me, birthdays have always been very special, and that's because
Yeah.
my mom's and my birthday are only 7 days apart. So
Oh,
we used to
wow.
just celebrate together.
Mhm.
And then obviously that became painful of going into her birthday and then
Mhm.
immediately going into mine. And it was such a roller coaster up and down. And one thing that I've started to do to I always try to do something special to celebrate my mom's birthday. And the irony that my mom's birthday is National Aviation Day
Oh,
is
that's cool.
incredible. But
Yeah.
like one year, I was going to Ruth Chris Steakhouse, which was my mom's and my special place. And the
Yeah.
one here in DC overlooks DCA.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was 4 days after I moved to the DC area. So I didn't have a whole lot of people. It was an emotional day. I took myself there for dinner to celebrate my mom. And one of my friends Venmoed me $20 and said, "Get a glass of champagne to celebrate your mom on me." It's
Wow,
like
that's so sweet.
those little things because I don't want people that are listening to feel like, well, if I can't physically be there for this person, then there's nothing I
Mhm.
can do. You're like, no,
Yeah.
there are things you can do. I love receiving flowers. I keep flowers in my apartment almost all the time. I am on a great first name basis with my florist, Steve. He actually just added me on LinkedIn. So, making our way through. But
Amazing.
I have come home on Mother's Day to flowers at my
Yeah.
door. And it doesn't always have to be pretty. This was literally ordered from someone's Instacart. No card showed
Oh,
up.
yeah.
I still don't know who did this, but
Oh, I
there's
remember this. I think you posted it on Instagram too, being like, "Who
yes,
sent me these so I can thank you?"
no one owned up to it. I still don't
Yeah.
know. I'm like, too many people have my address. It's
Yeah.
fine. But it doesn't matter if you're far away because there are still ways that you can show up. But then for those
Yeah.
really, really close people for you, I will say my best friend shows up in ways that I could just never imagine, and I knew that the
Mhm.
15-year anniversary was going to be hard for me. That felt really milestone. So
Yeah.
we went to Denver together for that weekend just to honor and celebrate my mom.
Wow.
And I she lives in Minneapolis, so I flew
Mhm.
through, picked her up on a connecting flight,
Yeah.
flew to Denver, and I wrote thank you cards to the crew and
Mhm.
said why I was celebrating. And funny enough, one of the flight attendants was an end of life doula. And so
Oh
she
my
came
god.
and sat with me and she was asking all
Wow.
these questions saying, I would love to know more about your mom and your grief journey and all this. And then brought me
Mhm.
champagne and I cheers to her in the flight. So there's moments
Wow.
like that, but then to go sit and have my best friend there in person with whatever emotions were going to come up
Yeah.
was
'Cause you don't know. You have no idea, like, what's gonna hit you that day.
exactly. And just
Yeah.
being present for the inner circle is
Mhm.
what was needed. And then again, those people that are so loving that are maybe not as my inner circle, the way
Mhm.
that they show up even from afar makes such a
Mhm.
difference.
That's amazing to hear, and I love getting those tips and just kind of how you can show up for the people in your life who are going through this because I think it's hard if you've never experienced it to know what to do to help because you just don't have a place in your mind to compare it to. Like truly one of the closest things that I can think about is like my a traumatic breakup, which is nothing in comparison, but like that's the closest thing that I have to understand like the type of drama and grieving like a life I thought I was going to have or a relationship, like that sort of thing. And it's
Mhm,
like, I don't know, like, I wouldn't know how to show up for someone in this way. And it's hard and it's complicated and it feels uncomfortable to ask too. And maybe sometimes asking your friend how you can show up is maybe one of the better ways to just bring up the conversation because they can tell you like especially if they've been going through this for years on end where it's like you've been going through your grief journey for almost 20 years now like you probably know what you need like
exactly.
me reinventing the wheel isn't going to be as helpful necessarily, but it can just feel uncomfortable if you're not someone who's used to talking about these sorts of things.
And I think what you brought up is such a good point because we often try to connect things and try to be
Yes. Yeah.
relatable, but in situations like that, the relatability, if you can't relate, can feel more insulting of
Totally.
I having someone and I've had that conversation before of someone
Yeah.
talking about my mom and be like, "Well, when my dog died," and
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
you're like, that doesn't help, and
Yeah.
that solidifies that I will literally never speak to you about this again.
Yeah, and it's
So
hard because as humans, we just wanna relate to people, and, like,
mhm,
I'm sure it's coming from a place of trying to relate to you, but in a way that feels like such a slap in the face because you just compared your dog to my mother. Like,
yeah,
they're not the same people.
exactly. So freeing yourself from, oh, I need to somehow relate to
Mm,
this conversation, because the person who's on the grieving side is not going to hold it against you that you don't understand what they're going through.
mm, that's a
And
very powerful point.
arguably, they're going to be happy that you don't understand what they're going through, because they wouldn't wish this upon you or anyone.
Totally,
So just
totally.
meeting them where they are and not playing the comparison game is going to be
Mhm.
more beneficial for both parties.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point. Well, I wanted to just close out this episode. Thank you so much for talking about this today, but I would love for you to share a favorite memory you have of your mom or a quick story or just something so you can honor her today here.
Mhm. My mom loved oldies music, and
Mm,
that's one of the reasons that I have my
uh,
Elvis vinyl earrings on. She
I knew
loved
you had a story behind it. You always do. I
Mhm.
love, yeah.
And I got these in, Budapest, actually, which,
Wow.
again, it just adds to the travel, but my mom loved oldies music so much, and that really played into me. Like, 70s disco is my top on everything.
Yeah.
So, the 2 favorite things that just make me think of my mom, outside of just borderline anything Elvis, is the fact the song "My Girl" by The Temptations.
Yeah.
My dad took her on a date to a Temptations concert, and they brought her on stage and sang "My Girl" to her.
That's
And
so cool.
so that was always my mom's song, and then there's a lesser known song called "Rock the Boat," which is by the Hughes Corporation, and my
Mhm.
mom in the car, it has a strong beat. I'd be in the back seat, she would always hit the brake and the accelerator, so I'd be rocking in the back, and she would
Yeah.
just sing the lyrics so loudly, and it was such a sweet memory in the car. But I just grew up loving music that she loved. And I
Yeah.
think, to wrap up, it's that also listening to your friends that are grieving of what triggers these positive emotions, because
Totally.
sometimes it's scents, sometimes it's food, sometimes it's music, but how
Yeah.
can you show up for them by those things that positively trigger good memories?
Yeah, because even, like, right now, you just, like, lit up talking about it. Like, you just immediately like, this massive grin is on your face, and you can feel the energy that you have remembering this moment in this car with your mom, and I think that that's such a good point of just bringing up the positive emotions and memories and the little triggers that not in a negative way, the positive triggers that
Mhm.
bring you back to that moment of you and your mom in this car together, and those are the moments that you have to cherish right now and, like, to share with the people that are in your life today who won't get to meet your mom. Like, I am not someone who will ever get to meet your mom, but I get to hear about her life through your stories and through you because you continue to share her, and I think that that is so beautiful.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much for sharing your story today, sharing so many actionable things that we can do as people who are supporting people going through a grief journey. And I just appreciate and love you so, so much. So, thank you for coming on the podcast. Plug away. Where can people find you?
Yes, I am Shar from Chicago on everything: TikTok, Instagram, and my life motto is to make friends in unexpected places. So
Yes.
feel free to connect, and always love a new friend.
She is such a friendly face. You won't regret following her and following along her journey. She shares about her grief journey, but also her travels as well. You should definitely go check her out and give her a good follow because she deserves it. Thank you so much, Charlotte.
Thank you, Janelle.
Bye. If this episode helped you feel seen or gave words to something that you've been carrying, send it to someone who might need that too. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. And for a first look at next week's guest, plus the parts that we don't always say out loud, follow us on Instagram at Out of Office Era. We don't have to do it the way that it's always been done, so keep choosing what's real and come back when you're ready.